Good morning, third grade. Today is Thursday, April 9th. Today we're going to take a look at Chapter 10, What's It Like in Space, and take a look at the exit ticket. So let's look at the exit ticket first before we get started. So let's look at today's exit ticket. Chapter 10 exit ticket says, in Chapter 10, we learned that gravity is different in space. Name 3 examples of other things that are different in space. Use evidence from pages 68 through 70 in your answer. So as we read, we're going to take special looks at pages 68 through 70 to see if we can get some help in answering this question. Chapter 10, What's it like in space? Since Apollo 11, many more astronauts have traveled in space. Scientists have learned that there are many differences between Earth and space. One of the biggest differences has to do with gravity. Remember that gravity is a force of attraction that pulls things towards one another. The force of gravity on Earth is pretty strong. Even the best jumpers can only jump a few feet off the ground. Try and see. Down here, the caption says, Want to jump high? You will have to fight against gravity. Remember that on the moon, astronauts Aldrin and Armstrong were easily able to jump up high. They didn't come down quickly either. Instead, they seemed to float down slowly. That was because the force of gravity on the moon is not as strong as on Earth. The moon is not as big as Earth, so the force of gravity is not as strong on the moon. If you think that's cool, wait until you read what happens in space away from the moon or planets. Out in space, astronauts do not feel the effect of gravity. They and their spaceship are moving freely in space. Since the astronaut and spaceship are moving freely together, the astronauts look and feel as if they are floating. Here the caption says, this astronaut is inside a spaceship in space where the force of gravity is less. Let's scroll to the next page. So now we're reading page 68. Up in space, lots of things are different. You can do a flip and not worry about whether you will make it all the way around before you come down. Down here it says, when you are free of the effects of gravity, it is easier to do flips and cartwheels. Eating is different in space too. I'll bet when you eat lunch at school, your food stays where you put it. If you set it on a table, it stays there until you pick it up. The force of gravity holds it down, but if you were up in space, you and your food would be moving freely together. If you let go of it, your food might drift away. For this picture here, it says, look, no hands. These astronauts' lunches appear to be floating. Now we're moving on to page 70 in your reader. There are other differences in space besides less gravity. Do you remember that the astronauts on the moon had to carry tanks of air for breathing? Another way outer space is different from Earth is that there is no air or oxygen at all in outer space. Look again at the image on page 69 of the astronauts inside the spaceship. Take a moment to look at that picture. The astronauts are not carrying tanks of air. That's because oxygen is being pumped inside the spaceship. Since there is no air in space, you also do not hear sounds in outer space. It's also very cold in space. The astronauts must train many months before going into space, so they know what to expect. Do you think you would like to go into space someday? And here's a picture, and the caption says, "This is what Earth looks like from the moon. Can you name some ways that being in space is different on Earth?" Now, now that we've finished reading the chapter, let's look back at what we're supposed to be answering in the question. It specifically says, name 3 examples of other things that are different in space, and use page 68 through 70. So let's take a look back at the reader. So here I am back on page 68 and 69. I'm going to reread this paragraph to see if I can find some clues as to something that might be different. Up in space, lots of things are different. So there's my clue that something different is coming up. You can do a flip and not worry about whether you will make it all the way around before you come down. So right here in this very next sentence, I found that one thing that's different in space is that when you do a flip, you don't have to worry about coming all the way down before you make it around. So there's one way that it's different. See if you can read page 69 on your own and find another difference to enter into your exit ticket. Now that we've gone back to the reader, make sure you come back to your exit ticket to enter your answer. What are the 3 things that you found that were different? Make sure you're using evidence from pages 68 through 70 to answer your question.